They didn't send an invasion fleet. They didn't fire a weapon. They didn't even come close to Earth. They scheduled a star to explode. And before this story reaches its end, you'll understand why the galaxy would later whisper a single sentence in fear. Never threaten humans with inevitability. If you enjoy slow-burn, cinematic HFY stories where humanity survives not by mercy, but by refusal, subscribe, like, and stay until the end. Because this is only part one. You are standing in a control room that was never meant to exist. The walls are raw alloy, scarred by rushed welding. The lights flicker not from failure, but from overload. Too much power. Too many impossible calculations being forced into machines that were designed for asteroid mining, not stellar mechanics. Beyond the reinforced viewport hangs Sol, your star. Yellow, calm, innocent. It has no idea it has been sentenced to death. The message arrived 3 days ago. Not encrypted, not hidden, not threatening, just administrative. Galactic Coalition Notice 771A Subject. Stellar Termination Authorization Target System. Sol Method. Induced Supernova. Cascade Reason. Preemptive Containment of Emerging Class X Species Execution Window. 30 Standard Cycles. 30 days. Not an extinction war. A scheduling error corrected. A line item resolved. Humanity was never considered an enemy. Just a future inconvenience. You remember the silence after the broadcast ended. No panic, no screaming. Just a hollow stillness, like the universe had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe out again. Then the questions came. How do you fight a supernova? How do you evacuate 8 billion people? How do you argue with something that doesn't hate you? The Coalition didn't fear humanity's weapons. They feared your trajectory. Species like yours didn't plateau. You didn't stabilize. You didn't accept limits. You burned, adapted, improvised, and every simulation agreed on one thing. If left alone long enough, humans would eventually rewrite the balance of power. So the galaxy chose efficiency. No fleet losses. No moral debates. Just stellar physics. You watched politicians beg across subspace channels, their faces pale, their voices breaking. They cited treaties, contributions, cultural exchange. The Coalition representatives listened politely, then reminded Earth that stars explode all the time. Natural phenomena. Unavoidable. Case closed. That was when humanity stopped asking for permission. The evacuation plans were drawn up in hours and discarded. There were not enough ships. Not enough time. Even if every vessel ever built launched at once, billions would still be left behind. And the Coalition knew that. This wasn't genocide. It was cleanup. You are not a soldier. You are not a politician. You are an engineer. Specifically, you specialize in gravitational manipulation arrays, experimental technology designed to nudge asteroid paths, stabilize unstable orbits, and one day, maybe, assist with interstellar construction. A project was shelved years ago. Too expensive, too theoretical, too dangerous. Until now, the idea comes quietly, almost shyly. A thought you're afraid to say aloud, because once spoken, it becomes real. Stars explode because their balance fails. Pressure against gravity. Fusion against collapse. What if the balance didn't fail here? What if Sol wasn't destroyed? What if it was moved? The room laughs when you finally say it. Not mockery. Not cruelty. Desperation laughter. Someone calls it madness. Someone else calls it suicide with extra steps. But nobody calls it impossible. Because humanity has learned, the hard way, that the word impossible usually just means expensive. The Coalition's method is elegant. They planned to seed Sol with exotic matter catalysts' tiny injections that would destabilize fusion symmetry, forcing a controlled supernova. A clean burst, predictable, final. But that process takes time. Time during which the star is under stress. Time during which gravity can be influenced. The arrays were never meant for this scale. You would need hundreds, thousands, entire planetary infrastructures dismantled and reforged into a single purpose. You would need to treat a star like a machine, and humanity has never respected the difference. Mars volunteers first, then the belt, then Earth itself. Cities are stripped, satellites torn from orbit, ships melted down and repurposed mid-flight. Every nation contributes, not because they agree, but because extinction makes excellent negotiators. The Coalition launches, at first with curiosity, then with concern. Their analysts report massive energy redirection around Sol, gravitational anomalies, infrastructure buildup at a scale normally reserved for megastructures. They assume it's evacuation acceleration. They do not intervene. After all, why rush? The execution window is fixed. You stand at the heart of the array network, watching simulation after simulation collapse under their own numbers. The mass alone threatens to tear the system apart. You adjust variables, compensate, overcorrect. Sleep becomes optional. Failure becomes unacceptable. The first array activates on day 11. Nothing happens. Then barely measurable a ripple in solar output. A microscopic shift in orbital harmonics. The star twitches. It is the most terrifying thing you have ever seen. Not because it's violent, but because it responds. The Coalition finally sends another message. This one is not administrative. Notice: unauthorized stellar interference detected. Cease activity immediately. You don't reply. You activate 10 more arrays. By day 15, Sol's gravitational profile no longer matches historical data. Its fusion balance stabilizes instead of destabilizing. The supernova trigger falters. Coalition scientists argue. Emergency committees form. Votes are cast. They decide to accelerate the cascade. You feel it before you see it. The star brightens. Not violently, purposefully, as if it understands the stakes. You realize then that this isn't just engineering anymore. It's negotiation. Humanity isn't fighting the Coalition. You are bargaining with a star. The arrays scream under load. Several fail catastrophically, tearing themselves apart in flares of white fire. Entire crews are lost in seconds, their sacrifice recorded only as a sudden drop in signal strength. You don't stop, because stopping means extinction. On day 21, the impossible happens. Sol's trajectory shifts. Not much, but enough. The induced cascade calculations fail. The supernova no longer lines up with the system. The Coalition panics. Stars are not supposed to move. They are anchors, constants, the unchanging background of civilization. And yet, here it is. Humanity has done the unthinkable. You haven't saved Earth. Not yet. You've just proven something far more dangerous to the galaxy. The plan was never inevitable. And humans do not accept schedules written by others. You know the exact moment the galaxy's confidence breaks. It isn't when Sol's trajectory shifts again. It isn't when the supernova cascade fails for the third time. It isn't even when Coalition observers confirm, with growing horror, that the star is no longer behaving like a passive mass of plasma. It's when the Coalition changes its language. The word termination disappears from their transmissions. In its place appears something new: containment. That word spreads through coalition space like a cold. Containment is what you do to plagues, to unstable technologies, to ideas that spread faster than fleets. You lean back in the command cradle as another status wall lights up red. 3 more arrays have failed. The loss count updates silently numbers without names. You don't look away. You learned early in this project that grief is a luxury for after survival. Soul continues to drift, slowly, deliberately. The gravitational arrays hum in synchronized agony, bending space-time just enough to coax a star into changing its mind about where it belongs. You are no longer merely preventing extinction. You are committing heresy against astrophysics. The Coalition convenes an emergency assembly. This one is broadcast partly by accident, partly because they assume you cannot understand the deeper implications of what you are seeing. They are wrong. The chamber is vast, sterile, and beautiful in a way that feels intentionally inhuman. Species of every imaginable geometry float, stand, or anchor themselves to gravitic thrones. Their forms are perfect, stable, old, very old. A being of refracted crystal speaks first, its voice harmonized through a translator field. Humanity has interfered with a classified stellar resolution process. No mention of genocide. No mention of Earth. Just process. Another representative responds this one, a gas giant intellect contained within magnetic rings. They have demonstrated Class X manipulation capability. A ripple of discomfort spreads through the chamber. Class X, the classification reserved for forces that change rules, not outcomes. You feel a tightness in your chest. Humanity was never officially classified this way. The Coalition always preferred softer language, emerging, developing, promising. Now they see you clearly. A third voice cuts in sharp, biological, impatient. This deviation was not predicted. Why were we not informed that the star itself could be mobilized? Silence. Then the answer, spoken with reluctance. Because no known civilization would attempt it. The camera feed flickers. For the first time, the Coalition realizes they are not dealing with a species that fears cosmic scale. They are dealing with one that ignores it. Orders are issued. Observation fleets reposition. Not near Sol, that would be dangerous, but close enough to respond if humanity escalates further. They still believe escalation is a choice. You are past choices. Day 24. The Coalition deploys gravitational dampeners at the edge of the system. Not weapons. Not yet. Just enough interference to disrupt your arrays. Your screens bloom with error codes. The star shudders, not in fear, in resistance. You grip the armrests as the simulation collapses again. Without the arrays at full strength, Sol will drift back into alignment within days. The supernova trigger will regain coherence. You don't have days. You have hours. Someone behind you whispers the question nobody wants to ask. What if we can't hold it? You don't answer, because the truth is worse. Holding the star was never the endgame. Moving it was step 1. You pull up a hidden project file 1 that only a handful of people even know exists. Project Perseus. The arrays were never designed only to push. They can also anchor. If you can lock Sol into a stable artificial orbit relative, not to its original galactic position, but to a moving gravitational reference, you can drag it out of the cascade zone entirely. Not a nudge. A relocation. The cost would be staggering. The risk, unprecedented. And the message it sends? Unmistakable. Humanity would no longer be pleading for survival. You would be declaring autonomy at stellar scale. Mars votes unanimously. Earth follows. No speeches, no debates. Just silent confirmations lighting up your display. Billions of lives have distilled into a single answer. Do it. You reroute everything. Defense grids shut down. Cities go dark. Energy reserves drain toward the arrays in titanic surges. The star brightens again, this time visibly, a subtle gold-white intensification that makes every human on Earth pause and look up. The Coalition notices. They issue a warning. Then another. Then an ultimatum. You ignore them all. Day 25. Perseus activates. The sensation is wrong. Like standing on a planet that briefly forgets which way is down. Gravity wobbles. Orbits tremble. Several observation fleets are flung off course, their crews scrambling to regain control. Sol resists. Not angrily, cautiously. You adjust parameters in real time, whispering calculations like prayers. The star's fusion stabilizes further, shedding excess energy into controlled flares that dance along its surface. For the first time, something extraordinary becomes clear. Sol is not dying. It is cooperating. Coalition scientists scream across channels. Their models disintegrate. Stars are not supposed to behave like partners. The anchoring field locks. The star moves. Not metaphorically. Physically. The Sol system shifts relative to the galactic plane, its path bending away from the scheduled cascade vectors. The supernova trigger loses coherence completely. The execution fails. Across Coalition space, alarms begin to ring. This was not supposed to be possible. And now comes the real danger. Because extinction is no longer on the table, retaliation is. Coalition war doctrine activates ancient, precise, merciless. If a species demonstrates uncontrollable Class X capability, containment escalates to neutralization. Fleets begin to mobilize. Not to destroy Earth, to erase its influence. Blockades, trade severance, information blackouts. Human colonies beyond Sol are declared illegal and scheduled for reclamation. They will not kill you outright. They will isolate you, starve you, freeze you in place, and wait for entropy to finish the job. You watched the first interdiction lines form on long-range sensors. Humanity has survived, but survival is not victory. Not yet. Then the message arrives, not from the Coalition, from somewhere else. It's faint, fragmented, riding on gravitational harmonics that shouldn't carry information. Your instruments barely register it, but your bones do. The signal resonates with the arrays, with Sol, with you. A pattern unfolds across the screen, ancient, elegant, unmistakably intentional. Not words, an acknowledgement. Somewhere beyond Coalition charts, something has noticed what you did. Something old enough to understand what it means when a species moves its own star. You realize then that the Coalition was never the final audience. They were just the first to be proven wrong. The signal does not speak. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't warn. It doesn't negotiate. It simply acknowledges. Your instruments struggle to translate it, not because it's encrypted, but because it isn't meant to be decoded the way language is. The pattern repeats in gravitational harmonics, folding space just enough to carry meaning without words. You feel it in your chest. Like being seen. The room is silent. Engineers, analysts, commanders, everyone waits for someone else to explain what cannot be explained yet. Finally, you exhale. It's not Coalition, you say. And it's not hostile. Someone laughs, brittle and tired. How can you tell? Because hostile forces announce themselves with power. This signal arrived with recognition. Across Sol, the star flares gently, almost imperceptibly, its surface responding to the same resonance. The anchoring arrays stabilize further, as if reassured. That's when the Coalition panics. They don't broadcast threats anymore. They cut channels, lock borders, mobilize fleets in numbers that blot out star maps. Containment has failed. Now comes suppression. Coalition doctrine assumes one thing above all else, that no species, no matter how clever, can stand alone against galactic consensus. Humanity is about to challenge that assumption. The first blockade snaps shut beyond the Kuiper Belt. Trade corridors collapse. Human outposts beyond Sol go dark one by one, not destroyed, but seized, their inhabitants relocated for evaluation. The Coalition believes this will break you. They believe fear will do what physics could not. They underestimate a species that has already stared into extinction and refused to blink. You convene the first stellar council in human history. Not politicians, not generals, builders, scientists, engineers, navigators, minds trained to ask how, not whether. The question before you is simple and terrifying. What do you do when the universe tells you to stay in your place? You answer without raising your voice. We expand. The room stills. Not with fleets, you continue. Not with conquest, with infrastructure, with permanence. You bring up the projections. Stellar anchoring is no longer theoretical. Sol proved it works, which means any star given time, cooperation, and absurd human persistence can be stabilized, repositioned, protected. The Coalition controls space through control of routes. Humans will control it through stars. Project Perseus becomes something else entirely. Project Constellation, not a weapon. A statement. Humanity begins anchoring not just Sol, but nearby stellar bodies at the edge of Coalition influence. Brown dwarfs, unstable binaries, forgotten systems deemed uninhabitable. You turn neglected chaos into fixed points. Safe harbors, unblockable. Coalition admirals fume as their strategic maps rot in real time. Their hyperlane models assume stars stay where they are. Human stars do not. The first confrontation comes quietly. A Coalition suppression fleet drops out of hyperspace near an anchored system humanity has designated. Haven 3. They expect resistance. They find construction. No warships. No guns. Just arrays blooming like metallic flowers around a red dwarf. Human workers in fragile suits welding civilization into place. The fleet commander hesitates. This was not in the doctrine. You transmit openly. This system is under human stewardship. We do not seek conflict. The response is clipped. Cold. Withdraw. This region is under Coalition jurisdiction. You send the star's updated mass gravity profile. You no longer have jurisdiction here. The commander orders weapons primed. Then the star shifts subtly, decisively altering gravity wells just enough to destabilize the fleet's formation. Not an attack, a demonstration. The message is clear. We are not fighting you. We are redefining where you can stand. The fleet withdraws. Across the galaxy, whispers begin. Not of human aggression, but of human defiance. Species long suppressed by Coalition preventive stability measures begin watching carefully. They see humans do what no one else dared. Alter the environment instead of submitting to it. The ancient signal returns. Clearer now. Closer. Your sensors finally triangulate its source. Not a ship, not a structure, but a region of space where gravity behaves thoughtfully. A presence. Old beyond measurement. It does not speak in words when it finally communicates. It shares context. You see flashes civilizations that rose too fast, burned too bright, were called for the greater balance. You see the coalition not as villains, but as caretakers who chose control over trust. And you see why humanity was flagged. Not because you are violent, but because you are creative. The presence offers no alliance, only a question. Will you replace them? You answer honestly. No. You show it soul, still burning, still alive. You show it Haven 3, not conquered built. We don't want to rule the galaxy, you say. We want room to exist without asking permission. The presence considers this. Then it does something extraordinary. It amplifies. Not power. Awareness. Across coalition space, ancient observers wake. Entities that have slept through epochs take notice of a species that moved a star, not to dominate, but to survive. The coalition is summoned, not to be punished, to be reconsidered. In the end, there is no great war, no climactic battle, no triumphant fleet burning across the void. There is something far more unsettling. A revision. Coalition doctrine is amended. Class X species are no longer scheduled for termination. They are designated autonomous variables, untouchable, unpredictable, to be engaged with caution or not at all. Humanity is granted a single clause in the revised charter. It is short. It is unprecedented. It reads, "No civilization may enact irreversible stellar actions upon another without mutual consent." A rule written in the language of stars. Soul remains where you anchored it. Earth survives. Mars thrives. Humanity expands not explosively, but deliberately building constellations instead of empires. And somewhere, in the quiet dark between galaxies, something ancient watches with what might be approval. You stand once more in the control room, older now, watching your star glow steady and warm. They tried to erase you with inevitability. You answered with refusal. The galaxy learned something important that day. Never threaten humans with destiny. Because if you schedule their end, they'll move the universe instead.